Hello and welcome to The Crime Reel. For today's true crime narration, we shall be looking at the many crimes of William Dale Archard. William was born on the 5th of May 1912 in Dardanelle, Arkansas. From a young age he was fascinated with medical science and aspired to be a doctor. However, perhaps due to money or maybe a lack of discipline or ability, he never officially studied medicine, but instead gravitated towards jobs with a medical setting. On the 1st of December 1939, at the age of 27, he began working as a hospital attendant at the Camarillo State Hospital. During his 2-year employment, he lived on the hospital grounds and learnt what he could of the medical profession through practical experience. His position involved him working in wards where patients were treated with insulin shock therapies. This type of therapy was used at that time to treat mental illness. Patients were repeatedly injected with large but controlled doses of insulin in order to produce daily comas. It was a popular treatment in both the United States and the United Kingdom in the 1940s and 1950s, until it was eventually phased out after medical research concluded the therapy to be of limited use. After he quit his job at the hospital, he held a variety of other positions, including a period working as a salesman. He married for the first time to a lady named Eleanor when he was in his mid to late 30s, and it is unclear how the marriage ended. Within a short space of time, he had married his second wife, Dorothea. In 1950, William was arrested in San Francisco for possession of morphine and was sentenced to 5 years probation. He reoffended soon after and was sent to a minimum security prison, the California Institution for Men in Chino. It was here that he met fellow inmate John Dallas Lawrence, who had been convicted of theft. On the 8th of November 1951, the pair escaped from the prison and stayed on the run for 5 days before being recaptured without incident by 2 California highway patrolmen. This time, William was sent to the notorious San Quentin prison to serve the remainder of his sentence. He was released on parole in 1953. 3 years later, on the 14th of May 1956, his marriage to his second wife, Dorothea, was annulled and he entered into his third marriage to Zella the following day. 2 months after their marriage, William contacted the police regarding a robbery at his and Zella's home on Stewart Street in Covina, Los Angeles. He informed the police that 2 robbers had entered the house armed with guns and hypodermic syringes. They injected both William and Zella in the buttocks before stealing $500 and then making their exit. When the police arrived, they were immediately suspicious of the tale that William had told, particularly as all of Zella's jewellery, which had been in clear view at the time of the robbery, had been left untouched. However, Zella, who was by this time feeling dizzy, corroborated her husband's story, although stated that she hadn't seen the robbers as they had put a pillowcase over her head. Physical examinations revealed 2 puncture wounds in Zella's buttocks. William did not appear to have any such wounds. After the police left, Zella's condition deteriorated. She started having convulsions before slipping into a coma. She died the following day without ever regaining consciousness. In photographs taken after her death, it was noticed that she had 4 puncture wounds in her buttocks. A search of the house and surrounding area revealed a hypodermic needle in a bathroom drawer and a half-used vial of long-acting insulin in a nearby field. The coroner was made aware of this insulin vial by the police sergeant Harry Andre, but as there were no poisonous substances found in Zella's body, nor was there a readily available method of measuring insulin levels in her body at that time, the coroner ruled that her death was as a result of bronchopneumonia. Despite there being no evidence that she had died from insulin poisoning, Sergeant Harry Andre remained suspicious as to William's involvement in his wife's death. After Zella died, William moved to Las Vegas, where he married for a fourth time on the 4th of October 1957. This marriage to Gladys lasted less than 6 months before ending in divorce. By spring of the following year, William had moved on to wife number 5. He married Juanita on the 10th of March 1958, and just 2 days after their nuptials, Juanita was found in a coma and taken to hospital. She died within hours, having never regained consciousness. Her doctors believed her coma was as a result of her taking a barbiturate overdose. However, this was never confirmed by blood analysis, as the methods used at the time were too complex to be routinely performed. It was noted on her records that she had low blood sugar, which did not have an obvious medical explanation, but no tests were done to analyse this further. Juanita was just 46 years old at the time of her death, and she had an estate valued at around $40,000, which is the equivalent of around $500,000 today. However, before she died, she had made a will that reportedly left William only $1 of her total estate. William, the widower, then married for the 6th time. He remarried his 4th wife, Gladys, who he had been briefly married to shortly before he wed Juanita. Gladys's ex-husband, Frank Stewart, was completing some business with William, and the pair were travelling on a business trip together. At William's request, Frank had taken out 2 airline insurance policies with a total value of around $80,000. These policies also provided cover whilst he was in the airport. The beneficiary on one of these policies was his ex-wife Gladys, who was now William's wife, and the other beneficiary was William's 72-year-old mother, Jenny May Archard. Frank and William had come up with the idea of staging a fall at Las Vegas airport in order to claim under the insurance policies. According to William, when he and Frank were in the toilets at the airport in Las Vegas, Frank slipped on a banana skin and struck his head as he fell. He was taken to the same hospital where Juanita had died a year earlier. Frank never regained consciousness and died shortly afterwards. With no other witnesses to the incident, William's account was accepted. Although the authorities strongly suspected foul play, they had no evidence to back this up. William filed suit to collect the insurance money, but the insurance company refused to pay out on the policy, not having been convinced that Frank's death was accidental, so the suit was dismissed and William received nothing. Sergeant Harry Andre, who had investigated Zellas Death, had no jurisdiction over the Las Vegas deaths, but reported his concerns to the Las Vegas police. Despite mounting suspicions, there was no evidence to implicate William in any crime. In January 1960, William's brother, Everett B. Archard, died during the course of his employment. For once, there was no suspicion of William being involved in his untimely death. A workman's compensation death benefit claim was settled for around $8,000, with the money going to Everett's son, Bernie. William and his mother, Jeannie, were named as trustees of Bernie's money. However, the money was never put into a trust account, and over the following year gradually reduced down to nothing. Around 18 months later, Sergeant Harry Andre was once again drawn into William's world when he read a newspaper account about Bernie Kirk Archard, William's 15-year-old nephew, dying following a hit-and-run accident in Nevada. It was William who had taken Bernie to hospital on the 21st of August 1961. When they arrived, Bernie was in a semi-comatose state and was complaining of a sore hip and scalp. Upon examination, one of his pupils was dilated, indicative of a head injury, and Bernie slipped into a coma on the 23rd of August, shortly after a visit from William. He died 10 days later on the 2nd of September 1961. As part of the autopsy, it was noted that Bernie had a low glucose concentration in his cerebrospinal fluid, and by implication, low blood glucose concentration. The pathologist who conducted the autopsy was aware of the Kenneth Barlow case, at the time being the only ever case of murder by insulin, and considered the possibility that Bernie's coma was due to insulin, but had no means of proving this as any evidence would have long since gone. Bernie's death was put down to the hit-and-run accident that had brought him into the hospital in the first place. At this point, Sergeant Harry Andre conversed with Sergeant White of the Los Angeles Homicide Department. Sergeant White was responsible for investigating fatal road accidents around the city and would eventually play a critical role in bringing William to justice. It was established that the accident in which William claimed that Bernie was injured had in fact never happened. Sergeant White also investigated and disproved a fraudulent claim by William for damages following a road traffic accident that he had deliberately staged in collusion with one of his girlfriends. However, there was still no evidence, only suspicion in the deaths of those close to William. Meanwhile, his marriage to Gladys had ended in divorce for a second time, and William began working as a hearing aid salesman and had started going by the name of James Lynn Arden. Through this job, he met the romantic novelist Mary Brinker Post. She wrote the million-copy bestseller Annie Jordan and was arranging the purchase of a hearing aid for her elderly mother. On the 18th of April 1965, just 3 months after their first meeting, Mary became William's seventh wife. By October of that year, Mary was made bankrupt and the pair had separated. Shortly after this, Mary was involved in a minor car crash. Friends who saw her after the accident said that she appeared to be in good health other than some facial bruises. She made contact with her estranged husband after the accident, and William visited Mary after she had returned home from the hospital. 2 days later, Mary was readmitted to Pomona Valley Community Hospital, slipped into a coma and died on the 3rd of November 1966. Blood tests showed that she had a very low blood glucose level and that some barbiturates were present. Sergeant White had now been promoted to lieutenant and was assigned to investigate Mary's death. Despite her bankruptcy, Mary had been a successful author, and as her next of kin, William stood to inherit her estate. Once again, he returned to be with his 4th/6th wife, Gladys, with a huge cloud of suspicion hanging over him. The investigation continued for another 8 months before William was arrested on the 27th of July 1967 and then charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder in the deaths of Mary, Bernie and Zella. He was taken into custody from his home in West Adams Avenue, Alhambra, and held without bail. The trial began on the 4th of December 1967, by which time the police had interviewed 400 people in an extensive investigation. Among those interviewed was William's second wife, Dorothea, from whom he was divorced for just a day before he married Zella. Although William was not charged with the murders of his 5th wife, Juanita, and Frank Stewart, nor that of his friend William Jones, who had died in 1947, this was due to them being outside of the Los Angeles County jurisdiction. The court did allow evidence to be heard about these crimes to show common plan or scheme. William's second wife, Dorothea, was a nurse who had told the police about the death of William's friend, William Jones. Jones had been involved in a money-making scam with William Archard, and William allegedly killed him by an insulin injection on the 12th of October 1947. Jones had apparently agreed to let William inject him with insulin as a cover-up for some of their illegal activities, which involved faking unconsciousness due to a head injury supposedly caused by a motoring accident. At trial, William pled not guilty to 3 counts of murder. The prosecution had the unenviable task of attempting to prove murder by insulin for the first time in US history and only for the second time anywhere in the world. The only other prosecution for injection by insulin was the Kenneth Barlow case in England in 1957, and in that case the drug was recovered from the body. In William's trial, the drug could not be found in the bodies as they had either been cremated or buried for so long that there would be no point exhuming them. The trial, with over 170 witnesses and 200 exhibits, encountered various delays due to William's ill health. He suffered from a mild heart attack during the proceedings. The defence argued that Mary had taken her own life and that the other deaths had been accidental. William, who was in tears during his testimony, said that Dorothea was motivated by her deep hatred for him. William had waived his right to trial by jury, and Judge Adolph Alexander found William guilty of 3 counts of first-degree murder, becoming the first person in the US to be convicted of murder by insulin. On 6th of March 1968, he was sentenced to death in the gas chamber of San Quentin State Prison, with the judge stating that, "I'm not a great believer in the death penalty. It is not much of a deterrent to crime, but I feel that as long as it remains on the books, there is reason for it, and if any case ever merited the death penalty, this is it." At the time, William said that a death sentence was preferable to life in prison. "It seems more human to me to take a man's life than to pen him up behind brick walls for the rest of his life." In 1970, William's conviction was confirmed by the California State Supreme Court after they held that evidence that he had killed Juanita, Frank and William Jones was admissible at the original trial, as it showed a common plan or scheme. 2 years later, in 1972, William's sentence was commuted to life imprisonment after the US Supreme Court had ruled that the death penalty was a cruel and unusual punishment. The death penalty was subsequently reinstated in the US in 1974, and the first post-Supreme Court execution took place 2 years later. However, William was never executed, dying instead of pneumonia at the age of 65 on the 29th of October 1977 in Vacaville, California. He served just 10 years for his crimes. Please like, comment and subscribe. Thanks very much for listening to The Crime Reel. Stay safe. Goodbye. Psst. It's strange how one case leads to another. I covered the Dr. Brenda Page case on the 22nd of March, and the psst was about the inventor of insulin. After that, my searches kept telling me about this case. Goodbye.